Loneliness feels like just low fuel, and it exists really to push us back towards people. Identifying when a child is lacking that connection, that feeling of belonging or fitting in, we are responding and building back that connection, even if the scenario may have nothing to do with us.
Welcome to Lulubug's podcast for parents, where we empower you with the tools to help children become confident, resilient, and ready for life's adventures. Hosted by creator of Lulubug's Garden, Jill Hunter, and child psychiatrist, Dr. Karen Menotis.
Welcome back to Lulubug's podcast for parents, where today we're talking about loneliness. Not that feeling when you're alone, because alone could mean you're actually very happy and content being alone, but loneliness. There was this time I was just moved to America. My English was not that great yet. I could actually hardly understand anything. And I was with a bunch of people my age. It seems they were all laughing, having such a great time. And just the word loneliness always brings me right back to that moment. It's a very heavy feeling, that loneliness feeling.
Loneliness is not about how many people are in the room with you. It's about the gap between the connection that, specifically for our show, a child wants and the connection that they feel, which means a child can be lonely at their own birthday party with 20 other kids surrounding them, in a classroom of 30 kids, or in a family of 7. So today, we're going to speak a little bit about how to identify it, that feeling of disconnection in your child, feeling of being alone in your child, why it actually physically can feel like a physical hurt, a physical heaviness, and the 10-minute daily tool that treats it at the root. So I'm very excited to share a little bit about it. It is such a human need, just like shelter, like food, like water. Connection is one of the core human needs that we have and has been linked in research to long-term outcomes. So let's get started. I think oftentimes we tend to think of loneliness in the elderly or in teenagers, but that belonging machinery is online from the very start in the human lifespan. And preschool really contains real exclusion, right? Real missing family at home when they're starting school for the first time. And naming it early gives kids a lifelong vocabulary for one of the most human experiences there is, which is the lonely feeling of not fitting in, not connecting, not belonging. And
It's
so,
such a heartbreaking feeling. Also, when you see it from the outside, you watch children play and you can see that child that's feeling excluded, but also that lonely. It seems like very often there's a sadness that goes with it. You can see it physically on the body, like wanting to curl up in bed or don't want to come out of bed or wanting to stay home. So even, helping out in the schools and you're noticing a child on the playground that's more standing to the side or just kind of just quietly stands there where everybody around them is just, you can tell they're laughing or they're having a good time. And this child that you can see the loneliness in him is just kind of just standing there.
yeah, that's so common, right? It's sort of like this hovering, right? Kids like standing on the sidelines, but they're not really playing. Some kids, it's very normal to have solo play where they're just contently playing on their own and it's developmentally appropriate. And that's okay and that's normal. However, the difference can be when you see that child sort of hovering, standing in the sidelines, just like you can tell that they're hoping somebody asks them to play, but that hasn't happened quite yet, and they haven't developed the skills or are too nervous to reach out themselves.
Yeah. Could this actually look differently too? So my kids their temperament is all just more to the calm side. So I feel like this is what I saw in them more often. But I feel like I've also seen just in the school system, as you're helping in schools, that you see also maybe the opposite, where it could be more this loud child already that's actually feeling lonely, but now wants to fit in so badly somehow that it's almost
Kind of counterproductive.
counterproductive. Yes.
Yes. In fact, right, young kids who are 4, 5, 6 are still learning social skills. So they haven't quite grasped the concept of, if I'm too loud or if I'm obnoxious at times, kids aren't going to want to play with me. And that's so common where we can see the opposite. Even, let's say, at home,
Mhm.
parents sometimes when there's a divorce and, they're going back and forth between households, or there's a deployed parent, or a parent goes on a trip, right?
Yeah.
And they have that lonely feeling from losing the connection that they've always had with this parent temporarily, right?
Mhm.
Can look like more clinginess, more regressive behaviors, which means maybe starting to act more baby like in different ways,
Yeah.
feeling more like outwardly angry behaviors. And depending on the context, loneliness can look very different for sure.
So, Karen, when we were writing this episodes and we're sitting with the writers, there very often came a little bit of the confusion of loneliness versus being alone.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit, about the myth and facts about loneliness and being alone.
So that's a huge one, right? I think oftentimes, especially in big families or in situations where your child was just with like 10 of their friends,
Hmm.
and they report something like, you know, nobody likes me or nobody wants to play with me. And you're like, well, you were just playing with 10 of your friends.
It seems like that very scenario does happen often.
Right. And so the thing I want to nail down for parents and for viewers and listeners is that loneliness really has little to do with the people around you, right?
Hmm.
You can so often feel, whether you're a young child, a teenager, or an adult, you can feel lonely in a crowd. What we're talking about is connection, is the
Hmm.
lack of connection and the lack of feeling like you fit in or you belong.
Hmm.
And that's really the core of the lonely emotion that we're focusing on right now, during the discussion about loneliness in young children. A lot of times, I think that a response that parents will have when maybe their child will say, I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling like I don't have any friends, is the first thing that we do is we start calling our friends and setting up play dates.
Yes, we do that. Or
Yes.
like in trying to fix for them this loneliness, but really we're fixing being alone.
Right, exactly. So often it's not that play dates are the problem or
Hmm.
a wrong response, is that we're missing the mark, right? And so loneliness is a quality problem, not a quantity problem.
Okay.
So even one deep, reliable connection outworks five acquaintances. And so sometimes the pack calendar is the barrier to real, true connection, which crowds can crowd out some slow, unstructured time with one friend where that friendship can deepen and give
Hmm.
that opportunity for the real connection to start happening.
How do we help the child to build these connection pieces
Right.
and to build connection?
So, in the brain, we're going to talk about children's brains right now,
Hmm.
young children's brains. Brain scans of people who felt lonely in this light actually showed that being left out lights up a part of the brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the same region of the brain that processes physical pain. So the circuits actually in the brain overlap, which is why in the beginning of the episode, we talked about sort of that heavy feeling of loneliness that
Hmm.
sometimes can feel so visceral and physical.
Yeah.
It's real. Like it actually activates the physical and emotional parts of pain. And so kids can really feel it very strongly. So when your child says, man, being left out really hurts, their brain agrees. It's the same circuitry as a stub toe, which is really interesting and helps us understand um, the their experience a little bit better. I also briefly mentioned about how important connection is to the human species in general. It's actually been shown to be linked to longer lifespans and lower health risks, believe it or not. So the brain treats connection like food and warmth and shelter. And so loneliness feels like just low fuel, and it exists really to push us back towards people, like a mechanism that we have developed as a signal of, hey, it's time to go back towards your people, find
Mhm.
connection again, because we're running low on that need. And so for kids who have low connection, like
Mhm.
we'll call it the low connection tank,
Mhm.
meaning their need for connection is high. Maybe they haven't gotten what they needed from that perspective. It actually activates the amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system in the limbic system of your brain. And so they actually get the amygdala gets more sensitive
Mhm.
because again, it's a human need, and the amygdala, just as if there was danger or lack of basic necessities, the amygdala sort of fires to say, hey, something's wrong, right? To protect you. And so when you have a low connection tank, or kids have a low connection tank, this amygdala gets more sensitive. And this is the part that a lot of parents don't know, which
Mhm.
is that because of this phenomenon, lonely kids start seeing rejection everywhere. And that's because of this sensitive threat response system. So a neutral
Yeah.
face to them, they will perceive it as an unfriendly face.
How do we help these kids? What kind of tools can we give them? What can we teach them young so they know what to do when they feel this way so they
Mhm.
don't have to feel like this for long?
Yes. We are going to be talking a little bit about connection with the parent,
Mhm.
right? That is the core of what they can bring with them
Mhm.
into any other room where you may not be.
Mhm.
If they have that connection tank full because of some of the strategies that are preventive that
Mhm.
we're going to talk about, it actually translates into their other scenarios where they might be at school or with their friends, and they have that connection tank full, right? So
Yeah.
they don't necessarily, they're not running on low connection. I like to start with what's going on in the brain so that we
Yeah.
can understand some of the tools that are helpful and why they're helpful. But with a warm, trusting adult close by, it releases oxytocin, which is the brain's connection and bonding chemical. It quiets that amygdala brain alarm system, and it actually reduces stress hormones like cortisol. And this is actually like long term even.
Mhm.
When us as parents and adults are identifying when a child is lacking that connection, that
Mhm.
feeling of belonging or fitting in, that we are responding and building back that connection, even if the scenario may have nothing to do with us,
Mhm.
right? The front part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, is in charge of problem solving. And when we do this, where over and over again, when we're noticing your child is feeling lonely, we give them our undivided attention. We're going to talk about special time,
Mhm.
even 5 or 10 minutes of child led activity or interaction of whatever they want to play, whatever they want to do,
Yeah.
phones away in the other room. You are showing them that they are the most important thing to you in that moment. That releases that oxytocin, quiets their amygdala response, and drops those stress chemicals. And as that happens over and over again, it's teaching the problem solving front part of the brain in them that this ache of loneliness is temporary and it's fixable. And every time a child goes through the full loop of feeling lonely, naming it, reaching out, and being welcomed back by
Mm.
the trusted caregiver or the parent, the prefrontal cortex is laying down a pathway, which is telling them and teaching them this ache is temporary and there's something I can do about it. This learned belief, sometimes called the internal working model, is exactly what protects against the darker adolescent version of loneliness that can look like, I just do not belong anywhere.
So how can we build this foundation that early? Like a strong foundation for them. How can we do that?
Building the foundation early is so important because it helps them, number one, know what they're feeling when they experience feeling left out or rejected in their first experience of preschool or kindergarten,
Mhm.
and be able to tackle that or even communicate that
Mhm.
effectively for you to help them in the moment. So let's talk about even before the situation arises. So we talk about naming, emotional vocabulary, emotional literacy early on. This one is so important.
Yeah.
So give them the word early, right? Tell them what it means. So say things like lonely means missing connection with people, missing one on one time with people. You can feel it even in a big crowd, and you should definitely tell them that. I think a lot of kids can relate to that once you say it out loud. They can
Mhm.
think of a time when all the kids were playing and they weren't included. I mean, that's such a common thing that happens in young children. And so once you say it and name it and teach them what loneliness means at its core, they can relate and it will click in for them. We're trying to really build this sense of belonging, membership, connection in our home, right? That's where it all starts. One of the things that can be really fun, I actually have one with my own son that I love, and I'll tell you about it, but is belonging rituals.
Okay.
So, kind of like, secret handshakes or family team name or Friday pancakes or something that's just for specific to the family or specific to you and your daughter, right?
Yeah.
That can be so powerful.
Give us some examples. Like, what do you do with your son? Or
So with my son, we actually talk. There's a book that I really love.
mm-hmm.
It makes me cry every time I read it. It's a
Can,
children's book. It's called The
can we
Invisible.
name the title? Yeah. And
Yes,
then,
it's
okay,
it's been
perfect.
around for like probably
Yes.
30, 40 years. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's a classic. It's called The Invisible String.
Okay.
And we in kids that have experienced loss or grief, we often use it because it's so it's so helpful, and it speaks to the invisible string, how you're always connected to people that you love by an invisible string. I could
So
already,
beautiful.
I
I
could
know.
already start crying.
Teary right now. Yes.
And that string can go across the world, and it can even go,
Mm.
if you believe in heaven, it can even go up to heaven. And it's so powerful. So I've read this with my son, even though he hasn't experienced loss, to prepare him for school, which, he's
Mhm.
typically always been home. And when he started school, weeks before, we started reading this book.
Mm.
And so now every time I leave, we have a big window at the front of our house.
Mhm.
And so when I'm leaving in the car to go to work, on days that my husband's taking him to school, he'll open the blinds and he'll tug on his string. And then I'll tug back to show that I feel it in my heart.
That's so cute. Interesting enough, and it leads to the episode on loneliness, but also to my experience that I had when I felt like so lonely moving to a new country at the beginning. I remember laying under the sky at night and seeing all the stars, and it somehow for a second brought the loneliness out even more. But then, like a string, it felt like I felt at the same time so connected, thinking, oh, they're still under the same sky. And it was a
Yes.
very peaceful feeling.
Yes. And so teaching your children about that same experience, even narrating it for them, like telling them the story that you just told me,
hmm
is so powerful because that's something that they can start to do when maybe you're not around or you've gone and traveled.
hmm
And they can look at those stars and say, I know my mom can see the same star right now. And it can be, and it's something that's special, right? Just between you two. So it's not something that, all his friends do with their parents. It's something that's unique to your relationship that only you two really know what it means, right?
hmm
So yes, so that's a really great
Thank you for
example.
sharing. I love it. Thank
Of
you.
course. And it doesn't have to be like that, right? It can be just like a cool goodbye handshake that
Yeah.
you make up with the dad or with the mom. And every time you leave, you do the handshake.
Yeah.
And it's like,
A little wink or whatever it is, but
yes,
you know it's your connection. You're connecting.
exactly. And it gives them a sense of like, I belong here. Like, I'm a member here. Like,
Yeah.
And so that can be so powerful for young kids. The other thing that's really important ahead of time is helping them learn reach out skills, especially during moments where it's not something that they're in the middle of trying to figure out, right? Because they're actively being left out or
hmm
rejected, and those feelings are still really strong. But rather ahead of time during playtime. You can do it in a really fun way and use like stuffed animals where it's not so personal to them.
hmm
You can do role playing and use like funny voices of like, "Hey, can I play with you?"
Yeah.
And make it silly and laugh together.
Yeah.
But that way they have a script for when they're in a situation where they want to play and you guys have played it over and over again. This isn't just like a one-time thing at home. And so it becomes part of their automatic memory that they can recall during
Mhm.
harder moments where
Mhm.
they might feel really nervous to reach out. We've talked in other episodes about how young children's brains are very concrete rather than abstract, and
Mhm.
meaning seeing things physically can be much more helpful for them to learn or remember or find a connection with than necessarily trying to recall it from memory.
Yes.
Because they're such concrete thinkers, sometimes it can be really helpful if you have a traveling parent with something like an object.
Mhm.
So that can be photos of you and the child, um, like a small picture of the family having a really fun time in their backpack. You can do like a comfort item from home with a scent, like a maybe a perfume from mom or something that just reminds them of something physical,
Mhm.
of a connection that they have already very strongly. And so that
I
can
know
be
my
really
dad
helpful.
and I always had, like, we both would pick a rock for each other, and we would just carry it in our pockets, you know?
Yes,
It just
that's
seemed like you could hold it in that moment
something
when you need
physical.
it. It's just something fit. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And it also gives kids indirectly sort of a sensory experience, right? Where they
Mhm.
can feel something, feel the roughness of the rock, feel the softness of the blanket, um, hold something, right? And so it can be very powerful for young children. So it's also something to consider during moments that you know there will be a chance potentially of such. And just keep it in the backpack. Nothing, it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be thought out every single time. And then the last thing, which is probably the most powerful thing that parents can do for children, is called special time. I call it special time. We use it often in what's called PCIT, which is parent child interaction therapy. And 5 to 10 minutes a day, the consistency matters, the time less, right? So if there's days that it's just madness, you can do just 2 or 3 minutes, right? But
Yeah.
try to aiming for a 5 to 10 minutes of phones in the other room. Your child has your undivided attention and it's child led play. You're going to play whatever they want to play in that moment.
Mhm.
You're not going to ask questions. You're not going to give instruction. You're not going to give a lecture. It is just fun time, one on one, undivided attention, where your child is the most important person in the room, in the world, in those
Mhm.
5 to 10 minutes. And that over time has been shown to have so many long term benefits, but specifically, um, it really helps fill their connection tank. And that has been shown to also translate into every other setting, whether or not you're there. So if their connection tank at home, even one strong, reliable connection, such as a
Mhm.
parent, can translate to them feeling like they belong, they fit in, they can more easily reach out
Mhm.
to peers um, in moments where they want to connect in a setting that you're not there. Parents get really frustrated because I think something that can be commonly seen with young kids who are lacking attention
Mhm.
or the perception of feeling connected is attention seeking behaviors. It's right starting to whine as soon as you pick up your phone to return a text message, or the minute you sit down they have a meltdown or a tantrum. That is actually more often than not your child seeking connection. And what we've seen with special time and doing
Mhm.
that regularly is that with kids that struggle with some of these behaviors, even after 1 week of doing daily 5 to 10 minutes of special time, those behaviors start to fade.
Mm.
And that makes sense because their connection tank is full. They don't need to beg for attention in negative ways
And so they
because
feel secure too, right?
exactly. Exactly. And so it can be so powerful even in the short term
Mhm.
by um by what we just talked about.
Give us a little recap of what can we do on daily basis, like these little routines. What can we do?
Yes. So in summary, building the foundation daily, we talked about giving them the word, right?
Mhm.
Lonely means missing connection, even in a big crowd. Belonging rituals can be very powerful. So, handshakes, the invisible string, the stars, whatever's unique and special between you and the child gives them proof of membership. They belong there. We also talked about rehearsing during playtime with stuffed animals, how to reach out. building those reach out skills, social skills for
Hmm.
how to ask other kids to play at the playground. And then also, one thing we didn't mention in that part is helping them rehearsing not just how to reach out, but what to do when kids say no, which will happen, right?
Hmm.
And what to say and what they might feel to prepare them for that hard
And how do
feeling.
you prepare them for that hard feeling? Because that might happen.
Absolutely.
Kids are going to say no and they're just going to stand there. How do we prepare them?
It's really important to start to give your kids perspectives.
Hmm.
It's and for kids, it's not something that they've developed or are able to develop fully on their own yet, which is theory of
Hmm.
mind, understanding other people's perspectives. But you can narrate it to them and
Yeah.
give them scenarios. So instead of you can say things in your little role play with your stuffed
Hmm.
animals, or if you're doing it both of you together, you can say things when the other peer says, no, we don't want to play right now,
Hmm.
of like maybe they're playing a game that they don't want to stop in that moment to start over to explain to you. Maybe they're having a hard day and they're needing their own connection with their friends in that moment. It's a good thing that you and I have our connection that you'll never lose.
Yeah.
Um, right. Explaining different scenarios that as adults, we automatically do, right? Maybe they're having a hard day and that's why they were mean to me today.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't like me. Maybe I did something to hurt their feelings and they're not ready to talk to me about it. We can do that as adults.
Yeah.
Kids cannot do that yet. And so we can narrate that for them so that they can see it in different perspectives of scenarios, right? So
Hmm.
that's super important in those preparation steps. And then lastly, we also talked about bridging absences with objects. So pictures
Yeah.
of family, sending them home with a special rock that only you and them have,
Hmm.
you know, a shirt, a blanket, a lovey with your scent on it can be really, really helpful in moments when they're feeling lack of connection or just missing and aching. So there are so many well documented benefits, both short and long term, for children
Yeah.
who learn these skills early on and who also have their connection tank full preemptively
Hmm.
by doing some of the things that we talked about to build their foundation prior to in the moment
Hmm.
necessarily. First off, we talked briefly about the short term benefits with seeing less negative attention seeking behaviors. Um, Specifically less cleanliness, smoother drop-offs, with with the less attention seeking, right? Less whining when you are maybe distracted with something else and they're
Hmm.
not getting your attention in that moment, less outbursts during those moments that might feel confusing to a parent because it's like nothing happened.
Hmm.
But really, it's a behavior that's seeking connection. And if they're not getting regular, consistent, positive one on one connection, they will oftentimes revert to negative attention, which is very developmentally appropriate because, again, connection is a basic need.
Hmm.
And if they're not getting positive attention, negative attention is better than no attention.
Yeah.
And so by doing the one on one special time, having those rituals at home that really some of the things that we talked about that help them know they belong, even at
Hmm.
home or even with that one adult, um, ends up showing up short term with less behaviors that are um, negative or unwanted at
Hmm.
home. It's actually counterintuitive because people sometimes think otherwise, but securely connected kids explore more and
Hmm.
cling less because they know that when they go explore, that secure connection will still be there when they come back,
Hmm.
right? So they feel more willing to go try new things or reach out to
They feel
other peers. It
safe,
feels
right?
safe. Exactly. Another short term benefit is that naming a feeling turns down the intensity of the emotion. This is called affect labeling. And when they can say, I feel lonely, I feel left out, they can recover faster than a meltdown and leads to action,
Hmm.
right? It leads to them knowing, okay, if I feel left out, then I've already practiced with mom or dad or caregiver that this is what I can do to try to reach out to peers or try to reach out to a different group of friends or try to reach out to mom or dad. This is the language I can use. We've already sort of done it during playtime.
Mhm.
The long-term benefits are amazing.
Okay, let's hear it.
There's so much research in the connection, the importance of connection in humans long term, longevity wise, health wise, even physical health, believe it or not. Research has shown that belonging, that feeling of belonging and connection in childhood predicts number one, lower depression and anxiety years later. But even more so, lacking connection has been associated with health risk in the same range as smoking tobacco,
Wow.
which is astounding.
Yeah.
Right. In doctor's visits, we often screen for blood pressure. Belonging really deserves the same seriousness because the outcomes long term has been shown very similarly. So the 4-year-old who can name loneliness becomes the 14-year-old who says, I've been eating lunch alone instead of something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that is so powerful, right? Because it's not becoming their inner narrative of worth, but rather a situation.
And probably if they learned it younger and can name it as such, they also maybe have developed tools to what to do in that moment then too.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's exactly what we're instilling
Mhm.
as early as 4, 5, 6 years old. We talked about how to prepare your kids, but I would
Mhm.
love to briefly touch on what helps in the moment
Okay.
when your child is maybe feeling left out and comes to you after school and says something like, nobody likes me at school, right?
Yeah.
That I feel like that's just like a punch in the gut for a parent to hear. Loneliness is not about how many
Mhm.
friends they have or how many play dates they have. It's really about feeling connected, even with one individual
Yeah.
can be enough to fill their tank. Naming that for them in the moment when they say, hey, mom, like nobody likes me at school. You can say something like, it looks like you might be feeling lonely. Is that what's going on today? And that helps them change the narrative from I'm the problem to I'm experiencing something
Mhm.
that, you know, is temporary and is fixable.
Mm.
And you're also giving them language to be able to say it next time if that's what they're really experiencing and feeling. And the word itself, labeling it, turns down the emotional volume because you're activating the thinking part of the brain by labeling the emotion. It turns down the amygdala threat response in the brain. So it helps on multiple facets. Then you can validate the alarm. So after you've named it for them, validate the feeling and the heaviness, not necessarily the story, right? Because sometimes kids will tell you, well, this is what happened, and it's totally irrational. Like it doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
S- So validating, though, that their experience, regardless of whether or not it makes sense to us,
Mhm.
is real,
Because they are feeling that feeling.
right? So saying things like, being left out hurts everybody's heart,
Yeah.
and then check the story. And you can say not you don't want it to become a power struggle of like, well, did that really happen? But
Mhm.
you can say something like, well, do you think it was on purpose or did the game just start without you and maybe you were a little bit late to the game?
Yeah.
And just offering again, offering different perspectives for them to potentially understand other scenarios of why they were left out or why a peer said, no, you can't play with us right now is really important. We've talked about how to do that in advance, but in that
Yeah.
moment,
Okay, and in that moment, it seems as a parent, you sometimes even think and maybe even say it out loud. Well, what did you do? Like,
mhm,
right? I mean,
yeah,
I feel like that comes up very often too. So, why were you being excluded, or But like that doesn't seem to be that healthy to say to a child that's already feeling lonely in that moment and disconnected. Or, but how can you approach that scenario?
right, right. And it's a very normal thing to respond
Yeah.
as a parent. But the problem is what that can do is invalidate the experience for them and potentially indirectly help them or make them feel or think that they're the problem, right? What
Hmm.
did I do? Was it me? What's wrong with me? Why don't kids want to play
Yeah.
with me? Um, by asking a question like that, right? And so we want to name the experience for them, validate the experience for them. You offer alternative possibilities of why maybe they were left out in that moment without saying that it was definitely one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then be the connection.
Yeah.
Fill their connection tank. 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes of special time, child-led activity beats a scheduled play date 10 out of 10 times. And then after you filled their connection tank, where in that moment, right, you are not talking about what happened with the peer at school. You are not talking about the feeling anymore. No more lectures, no more nothing. Now it's just playtime, and it's whatever you want to do because I'm here for you.
Yeah.
And enjoy it. Have fun, right? 5 to 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour-long thing. If you want a whole hour and you have the time, amazing. And then after that, coach one small brave move.
Mm-hmm.
So you can give them scripts, right? After special time, after that feeling, that connection tank has been filled, offering again skills for the next time that they encounter a situation where they're wanting to feel included, feeling lonely, and maybe you're not there.
Yeah. And I can see the value of teaching this so young and early and often, because it does seem as they grow even just a little older, and this happens more over and over and over again without having these tools, that they come up with their own tools that are probably not as helpful.
Right.
And
They
just to protect themselves from this pain, you know?
exactly. And that might look like not asking to play next time
Yeah.
or withdrawing, right? Or maybe pushing a child down a slide next
Mm-hmm.
time because they were quote unquote mean and didn't let me play. It's not that your child is a mean child. It's just that if you don't teach them the right ways to respond, the most effective ways to respond that work, that they can tell
Mm-hmm.
work, they're going to find other ways, right?
Yeah.
It's called adaption,
Yeah.
maladaption in this scenario.
But I like how you said, like, once you do start these rituals or do start these practices, that those maladaptions will disappear slowly
Mhm.
because their tank is full and they don't need
Exactly.
to do that anymore.
Let's say you're at the park and
Mm-hmm.
you're sitting on the picnic table and you have sort of scripted, okay, now maybe what are some things you can say to try to rejoin the game? And
Mm-hmm.
whether or not it worked, when they come back to you, welcome them back loudly. Like it was like you're so excited to see them.
Mm-hmm.
30 seconds, face bright, arms open, when you guys are reunited. Every warm welcome back is a repetition. The ache ends, people come back. I belong. This is temporary.
I like that. Is there anything else we should watch for?
Kids won't always tell you they're lonely. And so just observing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And proactively reaching out if you're noticing that your child goes silent all of a sudden, or they'll maybe sometimes resort, some for the older kids may resort to screens, or maybe just like hovering and you can tell that they really want to ask to play, but they're
Mm-hmm.
just kind of standing in the sidelines. Be proactive and come out and say, hey, can we play for like 10 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Just me and you. I'm like, this looks so much fun. I really want to go down that slide. And you will see their face just light
Light
up.
up.
Yes. And so that can be so helpful, right? So sometimes we don't always wait for our child to come to us. We can just initiate that ourselves if we're there and we notice it. We can't prevent loneliness. It is a normal human emotion that is designed to, just like when we're hungry, a signal
Mm-hmm.
to tell us, hey, it's time for more connection. It's time for you to go reach back out to your people. So we shouldn't try to prevent loneliness. But our job is to make sure that that your child knows that loneliness is a visit. It's not there to stay.
Mm-hmm.
Name it, warm it, walk them back to people. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the whole skill.
Well, thank you again, Karen. That was a heavy feeling, and I'm so glad you taught us tools to work with our children.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so excited for kids to also watch the episode of Lulubug's Garden on YouTube on loneliness. I think these episodes are just such a great place for parents to start so that kids can start sort of get primed on some of the basics, concepts, and
Mm-hmm.
skills in a really fun, interactive way that then the parent can really build on.
Talk to your kids about it.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next episode.